Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today, we're bringing back to the show Ben Hong. Ben, thanks for joining us again. How you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
I'm super excited to have you back. For everyone who didn't catch you on the show last time, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on who you are, what you do, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, so my name is Ben Hong. I work at Netlify with Jason, which is awesome. And as far as the things that I do in the web community, I'm on the VueJS core team, working primarily with docs. And I just love the web community and glad to be here.
Super excited to learn more about Vue. So the last time that we were here, we talked about kind of the basics of Vue. We did an intro to Vue course. And what I am excited about today is that we're going to talk about a specific API in Vue, which is new in Vue 3, right?
That's correct. It is technically, you can technically use it in Vue 2, but it was introduced in Vue 3 as like official support.
Okay. And so this is called the Composition API. And
that is correct.
Actually, a few people have described this to me as being like React hooks, but not a one-to-one API, but in the spiritual equivalent of React hooks in Vue. Can you say a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that would be easiest is, so if we want to bring up the project that we went over last time.
Jumping right into it. Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah, because I think a comparison just to set everyone for the context in case they don't have the Vue background, I think would help to show that.
Okay, so let me open up. This is the project that we worked on last time. This is we made ourselves a wish list. So let's look at this and then we'll book it too. So, or we'll boot it up real quick so we can actually see, because I'm having trouble remembering what this thing did. All right, so we have our main.js, which loads our app. I'm going to see how much Vue I remember, because this is
I'm going to let you talk through it first.
Okay, so it loads our app. Our app has a template, which is our wish list. It has a script, and then if I collapse this script, we also have style. And this is something that I thought was really cool about Vue, is this concept of a single file component where you write your styles, your markup, and your scripts all inside of HTML tags. So the template tag, that's an HTML like standard. Script and style are obviously HTML standards. You use them in everything. The template tag's a little bit lesser known, but it's no less standard. Like it's supported in all browsers. It's not something that you need a framework for. Vue just uses it in kind of a novel way, where it says whatever the content of your page is going to be, wrap it in this template tag, and then presumably in their build process, they're kind of linking these three together so that they all kind of execute in the same context.
Exactly.
But so our wish list here is a component that we're importing, and then we provide that to our app, and that lives in here. And this puts out just markup. We've got a div, we've got some headings, a list, and then we've got some Vue specialty stuff. We've got Vue 4, which is like a for loop. So we're getting filtered wish list and doing a gift. And let's see what else I can remember. We have, where did this come from? This came from computed. And so computed properties are different from data, but they both end up in props. Is that correct?
You can think of it that way. Yes. They're data that's available to the template or the component to be used.
Okay. And then we set up filter text, which is like an input, and we have this set up as a model. And when I call something a model, that's telling Vue that it should have a two-way binding, right?
There you go. Yep. Okay. Exactly.
So that means that when we type into this input, it will keep the value of filter text updated with whatever the input value is. So this is like, these are some of the nice things about Vue, right? Is that if we were going to do this in React, we would need a use state hook or some other kind of state or context to keep track of what that local state is. Whereas Vue just kind of knows that that's a common thing, and it makes it straightforward. You say Vue model, and then you give it a value, which is this empty string, and it's like, okay, I'll do the rest. So that's a really nice API. That's pleasant. So let's boot this thing and see what it does so that I can remember. So I'm gonna run it with serve. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Okay. Serving. And did it not like something? Oh, what have I done?
Oh, it's a node SAS binding thing. I get this.
Oh, it wants
They made the install.
it
again.
wants 12. I just need to switch to 12.
Okay, got it.
NVM use 12. Okay.
So probably like an outdated node SAS.
I think the last time we ran this, I was in node 12, and so I built it against 12 instead of.
Fair enough.
Let's see. So I'm going to I didn't open another window or anything. Okay, here we go. I have a browser window, and let's drop this in here. Good. Okay, so this is our wish list. And we have a list of toys, our retro toy list, and we can search for something like this, and it filters down for us. And it all happens in real time, and that's all done with this logic here, filtered wish list. So filtered wish list looks at the search text and then checks that the name includes that search text. So it's a very naive, fuzzy search, more or less.
Yes.
But I mean, this is cool. So we basically wrote a search filtering component in, about 10 lines of code, this plus the markup to do it. And we didn't have to include any of that logic up here, which that is something that I think can be confusing when you're working in React, is a lot of times you'll see that logic sort of tucked right into the markup, because the way JSX works, it's all part of the same component. So you can you'll do a little bit of logic and some state up here, and then you'll have your components, and then in your components you'll write a filter for something, and you can clean that up, but it's not like this. Almost feels like it's almost this makes the right thing the easy thing, in that it's setting up the right guardrails and providing the right basics, so that I know how to do that. I don't have to come up with a pattern or consult a React expert for the right way.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so the other thing to note about the computed, if we scroll down, is that one of the things it does for us really well as far as abstracting things is a lot of times we want to watch reactive data pieces and do things accordingly to it, and usually then update the said thing. And so computed properties make it really easy, because as we can see in this function, we're watching both the filter text and the GIFs, and then using those, we compose together what we want to ultimately return. And so it basically makes for a really sort of a declarative way of watching your data that you want to sort of track and do computations on, and then Vue will do all the caching and memorize it, whatever. It'll do all that for you and worry about performance, and all you have to do is just use it in your app.
Nice. And so a quick little shout out. Jeez, everybody. Nate, Pilo, Melvin, Fernando, thank you so much for the subs. I appreciate it. We got a hype train going. Very much appreciated. Here we go on to level 2 of the hype train, I believe. I still don't know what hype trains mean. You get emotes, right? So Ziggy, oh my goodness. All right, here we go. We're going.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited. Hey, now that you subscribe, you have access to the boops. Please use those emotes. And you can do all sorts of fun things. You can rain boops on us. You can also, if you use the corgi, there's some fun there if this is your first time on the show. So Ben, did I cut you off in mid sentence?
No,
Okay,
that was the kind of main thing I wanted to do.
I got so excited about everything that was happening.
No, this is awesome.
So what I thought would be interesting is what we've done here with computed, and we've got this submit vote method, and we've got some interactions happening here. Is this a good candidate to refactor to the Composition API?
Yeah, so I think this actually sets us up to frame the context around the discussion around the Composition API.
Okay.
And so
Perfect.
What we have here, actually, if you look at the component again, is that you'll see that when we're exporting an object, we're defining specific configurations, right? Like reactive data goes in the data key, computed properties goes in the computed key. And then when we want to expose functions, to the component, then that goes into methods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is actually known as the options API. And so how Vue has traditionally been done. And so this is one way of writing your Vue apps, and the composition API is basically a different way of writing. Not necessarily more valid, it's just it has its trade-offs, but it's basically an alternative way of doing the same thing you would normally do in the options API.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do so that we don't break our old example is I'm going to make a copy of this.
Yes,
and
perfect.
So let's see if I can do this. CP-A, let's learn Vue. Okay. No, that was wrong. And so I need to copy that one to, what are we going to call this episode? It is called...
Let's Learn Composition API. It's probably, that's pretty... Dun, dun.
Composition. This is the worst. Okay. Is that going to work first try? Please work first try.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. Do your thing. So the dash A should copy like all contents recursively, get us all the folders and everything. I should have deleted node modules first. I have regrets, chat. I have regrets. All right. Oh no. Oh God. Can you do it? Can I get a compooper in the chat? Yeah, don't need to install at least. Well, probably we're going to have to... my guess is this will also manage to corrupt it when we copy node modules. So we'll see what happens. And...
I guess while we're waiting, I can talk a little bit more about the composition API if you give it a few more seconds.
Let's do that.
So earlier, as we sort of talked about, Options API kind of gives you these guardrails and conventions for where things should go. And that was really great because for people who had very little JavaScript knowledge, they knew that like, oh, if I want data, I'll just put it in the data option. If I want to expose a method, that would go in method. And so the reason why composition API was introduced is because eventually, as we know, with any architectural patterns, there are always trade-offs. Mm-hmm. And while guardrails are useful, especially early on, and when you have really solidly encapsulated like business logic and such, when you start conflating scope and ideas, now it starts to get a little bit weird organizationally because things that, let's call it all your search features, are now sort of spread out between data, computed methods, like it's sort of spread out amongst the options and mixed up with other things. Let's say you have a search function and then you have like a filter option. Those might want to be encapsulated modules, but due to the sort of original design of the Options API, you have them sort of broken out in sort of like in a way that might not be how you want to organize it. So the composition API is a way to introduce this sort of as an alternative to sort of address that.
Cool. Yeah. So that makes sense. And I do like the idea of being able to sort of choose your abstractions, right? And that, as the name would suggest, kind of compose things a little bit as opposed to just having to shoehorn everything into one big pile. So if we want to get started, like I guess maybe one thing that we should look at is let's just open up the composition API docs here. Here maybe? Or is there a better place for it?
Waiting for it. No, that's it. That's the official one.
Okay. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. And now I have just so I'm not going to read this. I'm going to let you be my docs today, but I figured we'd just throw the docs out there for folks.
Absolutely.
And so what are we looking at when we get into the composition API?
Yeah. So I think, honestly, the easiest thing is to just, do some code and show people something that works. So let's go ahead and just create a new component that's not wishlist for now. And let's just do a counter.view.
A new component?
Yeah, let's do a new component. That way it's just, we can sort of not conflate things because obviously wishlist has a little bit of logic going on. So
I got you.
We'll refactor it once we've, all right, so in here we have our template block we can start out with, and then we can just give it like an H1 of counter.
Okay.
Yes, we are going basic, Voltron. And then we're going to go to the script.
Okay.
All right.
And then we're going to... What is it? Why is it yelling at me?
I don't know at the moment.
It's just helping prettier.
So. What we're going to do, though, at the suggestion of the coding Carter, actually, just to help you out with a little bit of IDE stuff, before the export, can you go ahead and import an object from single quote view. Yep. And then so inside of the object, let's go ahead and pull out the define component method. So this is one of the new things with Vue 3 is that we have a lot of component methods, helper methods for things. And so so next to default, we're actually going to pass the empty object into define component. And this will help with some of the typings and that kind of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Basically.
Okay.
So, so this is just like a convention you might see closer to the Vue 3 sort of as components go on. Okay, so given that, now here's the thing, right? So right now, what we typically want to do is we want to define like a current count, right? So typically, let's go ahead and define a data option. Let's do data colon, and then we can, and so this will need to be a function that returns an object. So similar to like the Redux pattern.
This one does?
Yes, so this needs to be, the data needs to be a function that returns an object. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, and then we'll need the double curly braces on top in order for that to render out.
No. Oh God. Oh God.
Oh no.
All right, here we go. All right, here we go.
All right, so now let's go ahead and just, I guess, drop this on app.vue so we can verify that it's working as expected.
Oh, that's right. Yep. So we will get our counter from counter.
Yep. And just swap it in. Great. Let's go ahead and see if everything's working.
And so we should see a counter right at the top of this once it boots.
Yep.
It'd be really cool if this just worked first try. Are you going to do it?
Fingers
what don't you
crossed. That's prettier.
Come on, Prettier.
We'll let Prettier yell at us. Deal with it later.
Yeah, you got to let Prettier cry itself out.
It would be neat if this just worked.
Wait, is it 8081? Do you have the other one still running?
No, it's 8080, but I'm wondering if I did something wrong. Did I?
Hold on, let's see. It says stream. Oh, actually, I don't know what directory. Is this the right directory?
Should be. Let me check. We're in Let's Learn Vue Composition API.
Oh, we are in it.
Yeah.
Because remember last time, I think we were in the wrong directory. We were spinning our wheels on that.
Yeah, that'll happen. But no, this should be it. So let me make sure this is not still running. It's not. Okay. I just switched over to Firefox, and this is like my favorite thing. Okay. So maybe let's try that one more time and just see if I did.
npm run serve.
My counter.
Yeah,
this is all correct.
Yeah, that's very standard. Import
just gonna pull this part.
No, this will work. This will work.
Yes.
Better work. Okay.
Yeah.
What is how?
That's something that seems weird.
Like it's there's no way this should function.
Yeah,
so
100% this should.
Let's Learn Vue Composition API. That's where I am.
Yep.
Package JSON. Serve.
Do we need to be an app?
That would I would be so confused by all of this. So
wait. Oh, we have that thing again. I am right. Scroll up. We're in the app directory right now. We're not in the root directory. I think you're serving from the root directory.
What the heck is this?
Remember, we ran into this last time. That's okay. So go cd into app and then reserve. We'll figure out the logistics.
Wait. What did we do? How did we do this?
I think at one point we were showing everyone like the Vue CLI GUI, and I think either we accidentally scaffolded an extra one. So we're inside the app directory right now. That's why it's serving the old one. So
here we go. I'm gonna
clean it up later.
I'm cleaning it up now, and we're deleting this folder. Get it out of here. Okay, so I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to delete this entire folder, and then we're going to come in here and let's get that. Here's our wish list.
Great.
Okay, let's try that one more time, and let's see if we can get this thing to cooperate with us. There it is. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I see something. Wonderful.
Okay. Wow, that was.
I was like, oh, this sounds familiar. I was like, this feels familiar.
Sheesh.
Deja vu. Okay. So let's take this one step further real quick with the counter, because you have a count, but we want to make sure we show that it's reactive. So if we go back into counter.view.
Okay, counter.
Okay, and then we're going to define a methods property underneath data. So so we'll do comma, and there'll
Like
be methods.
this, right?
Yep, just like that. And it'll be an object, and then we'll say like increment count. We'll just call it something simple. And this will be a function. And then the only thing, okay, actually, I don't know if this
Is this right?
So not quite, because we'll need, so this is one of the unique things about Vue is that we need the this context. So I believe the arrow function is gonna break it because you'll need to prefix the this.current count, and it needs to refer to the Vue instance. So usually when we define a method in Vue, or at least in the options API, it'll just be, yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
So this is a limitation, for example, of the options API, is that if, as far as like the this context go, there is a bit of magic helping us to know that like it's referring to the data current count.
And I do think, like, as a JavaScript developer, the hardest mental hurdle that I had to clear was this.
Yeah.
Because it like scope in JavaScript is already, there's a lot of context to hold in your head about like what scope means and why things are where they are. And then you get into this idea of this, where, so now we're in a scope, but somehow we're in a broader scope that holds this. And it's like, wait, how did this happen? And I know that it makes sense when you like break down the computer science, but it's so many, it's so many individual pieces of knowledge to hold. So if the composition API lets us get away from this, I'm already in a much better mood.
It's funny though. I've noticed that some beginner JavaScript people, because they don't, like, they've heard that this is complicated, but when I just tell them that this refers to the component itself, they almost are not thinking of the context in the way we would normally think of this. And so they're like, oh yeah, well, obviously I'm talking about this .current count, which they can see on line 10, for example. But to your point, it is a very complex topic that has a lot of foot guns, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's tricky too, because like, when you can, like, it's like this current count, but then if I move it, or it's inside of another, it's just like it's such a fragile mental model, right?
It can be, yes.
I'm a very big fan of I used to be kind of an evangelist for the idea of functional programming. I've since backed off because I think dogmatism is a silly thing to have as a developer, but I think what I have found is that being explicit is usually preferable to not being explicit. And so I love the idea of any indirection having an option to be explicit. And I think that's a good path forward. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and implement this method. Again, this is for the sake of making sure everyone's come with the same mental model. And so let's just get add a button element. And then
wait, let me see if I remember. Hold on. It's click.
Yes, that is exactly
Look at me go. Okay.
So the only thing is you don't do the braces on the, so we just do the double quotations because that's the JSX way. But since we're in templates, we don't need to worry about the JSX curly.
So I'm, because I did the that tells it that it's going to be JavaScript.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Yep. All right. So
so let's go and save that, and I think we're ready to go.
Boop boop boop.
Magic.
Look at it
go. Okay, so now I think we're ready to go as far as refactoring this small piece and talking about the composition API.
Yes.
So the first thing we're going to introduce with the composition API, the way you know that anyone's using composition API is that let's go ahead above data. Let's go ahead and add a new option, and we're going to call it setup. And it's going to be a function that return, basically, a function with, it's just going to be a function actually. Yep.
Like this?
That's it doesn't need to return an object. It just needs to be, just needs a function. Yeah, it's just a setup function.
I gotcha.
Think of it like a lifecycle hook. That's the way to think about it. And so, okay, so in here, this is going to be basically, so we're going to start defining something. So whatever's in setup, think of it like plain JavaScript. So if we wanted to define, let's say, a const current count 2, that's what we do. We literally define a constant called current count 2, and then let's say equal to, let's say 10. So we'll have something different on the screen.
Okay.
And so here we've declared our variable, and then to expose it to our component, let's go ahead and add 2 line breaks, and we're just going to return an object that includes current count 2.
Okay.
Okay. So now we can actually, inside of our template, let's go ahead and switch current count to current count 2. And we should see now on our page that this has changed.
Yes. And I broke my incrementer.
Yes, the incrementer is broken, right? And that makes sense because our method is currently pointing at the data option rather than what we set up. And so if you wanted to go ahead and let's keep at this trend for current count 2, define a method inside of setup, right, that changes it. Let's go and do another declare another function like we would in normal JavaScript, like const increment current count 2.
Oh, you want to do it like this? Okay.
It doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. So this is exactly it, right? Now you're in JavaScript land. So you do it as you normally would write JavaScript. There's no Vue specific thing as far as this stuff. You just need to make sure you return something as far as what you're exposing. So theoretically, you would say, yep. So just as Jason's doing, you'd think that this would be, So you would think that this would work. But since we're in JavaScript land, this doesn't work. Because why? Because right now it's just static data. There's no reactivity, right? I think with React hooks, if I'm not mistaken, you have to define that your Reactive is supposed to watch it. And so similarly with Vue, we also have to do the same thing. We have to tell it like, this is something that you need to watch.
Okay.
So what we need to do is we need to import a helper method called ref. So if we go up into our import,
right here.
And then comma add ref, great. And so that's all we need. And then we're going to wrap the number 10 inside of a ref, which is going to be a method, and we pass 10 to it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now that we've done that, actually, so think of it like this. You've basically very explicitly told Vue that like, hey, this value of 10, we want you to watch it. It's now going to be a reactive reference. And so the inside of our const increment count, we want to actually update it, right? And so the thing is that Vue 3 is using proxies as a way to manage all of the reactivity.
Okay.
And so we have to access current count by doing current count 2.value.
Got it. Okay. So
because that's what you're changing, right? You're not changing the reference, you're changing the value inside of the reference. So or you don't even need to. Oh yeah, that's you don't need to do that actually.
Oh, I don't need to do this.
No, it's just current count 2.value plus equals 1.
Oh, so we can modify it then.
You can. So yes, at that point you are, because you can modify it. Yes.
Got it.
It's not that you can't modify.
So it's not. I thought you meant it was like immutable in the sense that once you put it into a ref, then you had to like create a new one and replace the old one. And
no.
Okay, I got you.
Right. And so let's go ahead and finish this loop, and then we'll kind of dive into it. Let's return. Okay. So we want to expose this method now, right, to our template. So increment count 2 is what we're bringing up.
And then I can just do that.
And then swap it in, and then let's make sure it works.
Wow. Okay. And so
that's it.
I will say my JavaScript developer heart is very fond of this because what I like about this is that I only need to learn one Vue concept to write this code. I only need to learn what ref does. And that lets me skip a couple hoops here. So with this one, I have to know that we expose data, and then there's also this idea of computed data, and then there's also this idea of methods, and I have to know how each of those interact.
Yep.
Whereas with this, I have one function. I'm sure that there are others as well that we'll talk about, but kind of this general concept of saying like to do all of these things that I was doing before, I have my one function, I write the logic that I need, and I return it, and then whatever's returned here is available to me inside of my component. That to me feels it's super approachable. Like it's intuitively understandable to me as a React developer, but and so I might be bringing the curse of knowledge with me here, but it feels a little more like, oh, I can just run with this.
Yeah. And so with refs, though, one of the things that actually, though, is a bit of a foot gun is the fact that you have this dot value concept. And basically, you have to always unwrap the value in order to actually access it. And so the one thing I want to show you then is instead, we're actually going to import a helper method called reactive instead of ref.
Okay.
So ref is the base concept that I need to introduce. But I actually think most people will probably like reactive better.
Like this?
And yep,
Okay.
that's it. And so what we do is let's go ahead, instead of current count 2, let's go ahead and do a const of state. Let's declare a new variable called a constant of state.
Like this?
Let's see, const state. Yep. And then it's going to be equal to a reactive object. So this is where you're going to pass an object into it.
And it would be like current count.
Yep. And then inside here, now we can just do current count. Don't even worry about the 2. Yep.
Okay.
There you go. And so now you've told Vue basically that like, hey, this object, everything inside of here is reactive data that I want you to keep track of. And so now increment count 2 can just be refactored to state.current count.
Like this.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm with you.
And so this is a very like this is what you would normally expect, right? Because the dot value, again, unless you're used to working with it, is this sort of a very specific thing. So now, yep, we can return state.
And I can get rid of all of this.
You can get rid of all of that.
Look at this beautiful code. And like, I think, this is, again, we're really speaking to my like, I would like to just write JavaScript heart.
Yep.
And okay, so this is nice. This gets in. And so then this is going to be state.current count.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. And this is going to be increment count.
Yep.
Boop, boop, boop. There we go.
There
Look
you
at it go. That is, I mean, that's beautiful code. Like I really like this as a general approach.
Yeah. And so the final helper method I tell people about is, here's the thing. You can imagine though, over time, as you have multiple properties in your reactive state, that in your template, it's going to be a little clogged as far as like state.count, state.this, state.that. And so there are times you might want to destructure it to make your template just more declarative. And so in that case, you might be inclined to say spread state, right? Like just prefix it with 3 periods. So let's go ahead and just show that real quick.
Is that going to work?
Yeah. Hold on. You can't see your screen at the moment.
Yeah.
Your GIF is dabbing.
What's up, Hasura?
And so, yes, that does not. Oh, you can full screen now. You're good. Okay. This will not work because, again, we are in JavaScript land. So what this will do is this will break our reactive data apart into static pieces. But that's not what we want. We want to keep the reactivity. And so there's a helper method that we're going to learn about now called toRefs. So if we import that, it's TOREFS. Yep. And so what this will do is basically take our reactive object and then expose it to the template. So yeah, we'll do the spread again, and then we'll do toRefs and pass state into it.
Okay. And so then in here, I would just be able to use current count.
Correct. And so now you still have the reactivity tracked, and you still can manage things within JavaScript, but then your template and everywhere else is a bit simpler in that regard.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And there we go.
Yeah.
It's still working, doing what we want.
Exactly.
This is pretty slick, Ben.
Now, let's go ahead and talk about computer properties because that is an important concept to Vue. Because again...
So before you ask that one, there was another question about components. Can you return components from setup, or do you still need to use the components property in the component?
Yeah, I would still recommend defining components outside of it because it's one of those, like, it's the dependency and it's honestly a little bit more declarative, but you can certainly import components directly in setup. And then I think there's currently RFCs regarding like syntactic sugar to help with that. So, but generally speaking, I would still use the options API to just like we did in the wishes example where you have a component and then you just pass it in. That's a nice way of just being very declarative about what's being imported there. And so that way your setup can just focus on logic rather than what you're bringing in.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the things that, while I love as a JavaScript developer being able to just write JavaScript, it does come with trade-offs, right? Like if we can put logic in something, the inevitable end state is that someone will apply logic to literally everything. And so the good part about that is you've got infinite flexibility. You can do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
The downside to that is you've got infinite flexibility and you can do whatever you want. And that can get you into a lot of trouble, right? So so I would concur with Ben that you go, whoa, everybody stop talking. Okay. I have my speaker on, which is apparently going to talk to me now. So when you're dealing with like working around APIs, try not to. Like, use the API until you have a really good use case not to use the API.
I love that.
Okay, so that is, I think, let's see. We were talking about, you were going to talk about computed.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? A lot of times when we work with data, a lot of times we want to do something when something changes, right? And so let's say in this case, we want to be able to show that like the count doubled. And so typically in, I think most frameworks, you would find a way to watch the current count and say, if current count is greater than 0, then basically set current count or doubled count to like current count times 2. And so that would be kind of be like the basic logic of what you want to do.
Right.
But computed properties in Vue allow you to basically declare that in a much simpler way. And so what we do is we can do this one of two ways. So I'll show you the easiest, I don't know about easiest, but let's go ahead and declare a new constant called double count.
Like just here?
Oh yeah, not inside of state yet. I'm just gonna show you, let's show it out here, yep. And so similarly, just like we had with reactive data and those sort of things, we want to use the computed property in order to basically watch reactive data and return something that will be basically track dependencies and then update data accordingly.
Right.
And so what we need is the computed helper method from Vue 3. So we'll have to import that. Okay. Yep. So we're saying, hey, Vue, we want you to like cache this stuff, right? Because that's the thing, right? It's easy to necessarily watch things, but then there's performance implication and those things. So here we would go ahead and type computed. And what we do is we pass in a callback function, which will then include what you wrote, which is that state.currentCount. Or basically it'll return state.currentCount times 2. Sorry. Just like that. Exactly. So now let's go ahead and return that to, let's expose that to our template.
Okay.
Great.
And now I can do.
Yeah, let's go ahead and render it somewhere. Yep. And so
it's doing what we want.
Boom. As you can see, it automatically updates. And so this is extremely powerful if you think about like, this is one of the ways like Sarah Drasner does a lot of her animations is because you go, watch this data thing and then just do this thing to it and then take care of it. I'm going to go do something else. Like that's what's so beautiful about this rather than having to say, watch this data property that then to do this, then the like computer just takes care of what exactly the way you want it to.
Yeah. So here's what I want to do. I just realized I forgot to let everybody know about our captioning and sponsors before we started because we just got right into it so fast today. So here's what I want to do. I want to pause here. I'm going to talk about the sponsors and then I want to come back and I have a feeling that you have some sugar for us on how to make this computed stuff even easier. So let me head over here real quick and let's just do a quick shout out. We have live captioning today. It is being done by Amanda from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much for being with us today. And that captioning is made possible by our sponsors, Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, and Hasura. Hasura's hanging out with us in the chat. What's up, Hasura? They all kick in to make this show more accessible to more people, and that really means a lot to me. I hope it means a lot to you. And you can see these captions on learnwithjason.dev's homepage, and they're also attached to every episode. Okay, so now that I've remembered to do the things that I'm supposed to do, let's get back to these computed properties and take a look at what we can do with them.
Great. So earlier, actually, one of the things I didn't mention that's the thing about refs is that as you use refs, you'll like your return object, you have to declare it every single time. And so your return object just grows. But I don't know about you all, but I like to keep things kind of concise. And so the double count, because it's associated with this state object, actually, we can actually refactor double count to be part of the object. So if you add just like a new property in that object called double count with the colon, and then you're going to do the same thing computed with the callback method of exactly what you wrote. So you can just copy and paste that over.
Interesting. Okay.
Now we can delete line 17 and delete line 26, and everything should still work exactly the same way.
Ooh, that's nice. Okay.
And so you start to see some of the possibilities is because with Reactive, you can basically start to group your like concerns together. Whereas in the options API, that wasn't an option. It was either all in data, all in computed, all in methods. Now you can be like, we can call it count state, for example. And then you might have something else that's called like to-do list state. And you can already start to think, because this is just JavaScript, this means that we could refactor it into modules that can be imported, that can be shared amongst components. I won't go too far, but like this is where the possibilities start to bloom.
Yeah,
it's because of how you can compose things together as you see fit.
Yeah, and this is slick too for like, you can see the so in React parlance, this would be like a custom hook, right? Where you can wrap up this data, all of this logic that's happening here. And then I could actually, can we do this just to show how this would work?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I have a theory, and you tell me if this works. So I'm gonna, I don't know what, is there a naming convention for like if you have a custom composition thing, do you, because like in React, you call it a hook, right? Is there a name?
So, okay, you will hear people call it composables. I don't care for that name just because I think composables sort of tells you that it's like this composition API thing when it's just JavaScript. So let's call it features. That's my personal thing, just in the sense that like if you had a folder of Lodash components, you wouldn't call it like Lodashables. They're just utility functions. And so these are basically features.
I don't know. I'm kind of into that. I think dashables should be what it is.
Dashables.
All right. And then do I need to call it .vue or I can just call it .js, right?
It's just JavaScript.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to export, let's call it, we'll do the default, and we'll say, is there a naming convention for this, or is it just like whatever you want it to be?
Default object. Or whatever you're used to. Basically, I would do it the way you want. Like, go by your instinct first. We can work through it after that.
So what I am going to do here is I'm going to make this into a arrow function, and I'm going to put all of this here, and then I need to go in and we got to import some of this stuff. So let's grab these. And we don't need the defined component. Okay, and so now what I've got is I have my Vue helpers, and I've got like a pre-built setup function that's kind of set to do what I want it to do. So then when I come in here, instead of doing all of this, I should be able to import
so we also, the use convention is common. So you might call it like use counter, for example. Oh yeah, you can do a counter store. That's fine. But that is becoming popular as well, similar to the React hooks.
Okay, so then what I could do is I could say like counter state equals use counter. And then down here, I can spread counter state. Oh, but maybe without the double spread. And then theoretically speaking now, I have a custom hook. There we go. So now we've been able to encapsulate this in such a way that like, if we need logic, if we need a debouncer, if we need a, we want to do some animation helpers or math helpers, these are now available everywhere in our app in a way that is easy to define and then share around. So
exactly.
I like that. I think that's really nice. And that does, as you say, it removes this need to put everything into a component and then to kind of like pass this stuff down between components or whatever way. These are all the same issues that you run into with any kind of component-based framework is how do you deal with global state versus prop drilling versus, like incredibly complex nested hierarchies. These types of abstractions let us get away from that, because now we can like reason about this. I can go look at this and see what the logic is that makes this thing tick. and I don't really need to worry about how it's used because that's separate from how it's computed. And I think that helps me reason about the code, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, and so something that's worth noting for people. So because JSON used a function to return an object, I believe this is the factory pattern. So this will generate a new basically counter store as sort of JSON to put it. But theoretically, if you actually just return the like object itself of like the state and the increment, this can become shared state. So we can actually create something where...
so you're saying like I could put this up here.
Yeah, you can move that out.
And then I could do...
so just remove the function actually. Yeah, just return the object.
This. And then in here, instead of... so then it wouldn't really be a...
Use counter is... I think that's... Yeah, so it'd be counter, and then you would want to destructure what you want from it.
Would that work, right?
I don't think so. Only because you're I think...
This
let's
would give me the
try
whole object. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it.
Busted.
Okay, that's what I thought. No, I think you actually have to. Usually, I end up destructuring it. So if I want, like again, like current count and increment, I usually destructure it directly. Because I think it's the same thing. Because if you destructure like that, I think it removes all the like the attachments. That should be part of it now. There you go. Refresh.
It doesn't like something that I'm doing. Object is not a function.
Are we calling it as a function somewhere?
I didn't think so.
Counter.
Export default. Do I need to... Am I doing something, chat? What am I doing wrong?
The toRefs. I mean, can we just log counter just to make sure it's... Or not in here, inside of the setup function?
Yeah, let's do it.
Just make sure it's pulling in counter correctly.
Object. Here's my current count.
Oh, it's a dot counter. Oh, it's name counter. So it's just counter dot counter, right? Because it's an empty object.
Well, no, I named it.
Oh, you named it that. Never mind.
Yeah, so let me drop it in without that, and we can take a look. Wait, is it working now? Hold on.
Okay, wait. Current count.
Yeah, now it's working.
Okay, now do you need just a hard refresh?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I think it was probably a hard refresh thing.
Yep. Now it's
okay.
Good. Okay.
So there you go. So now theoretically we can now import counter across different components, and when you increment it on one page, it would actually change somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and
you
I guess
basically
we could also do this like I think this way, right? And it would let us do it as use counter then, and it would still get the shared state.
I think so. I think you're right. I haven't played around with this particular pattern.
I think I like this because it's just a little clearer to me what's happening when we do this.
Yeah. Go for it.
And then we've got.
Oh.
Go. I'm also just a little confused by why this doesn't work.
Yeah, let's go back and
really
see if
I just work.
So let's try to destructure it now.
It works. I must have typoed something before because
also,
whatever it was, it seems to be working now.
Okay, so we're good now. No, I think so. Sorry, I think N Muleman. Sorry, the destructure. Sorry about that. Yeah. So sometimes the Vue CLI needs a hard refresh for depending on how I think the imports work. So that may have been what we ran into. But there you go. Now it works.
So we can go back to 0. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. This is, this is pretty slick, right? This is a really nice pattern. It feels good to use. It feels approachable without being a Vue expert. Like, I am immediately aware of what's going on, which I think is a nice feel. And like these, I would have to look up what these do, but your explanation was fast enough and clear enough that like, I don't, I get it. I get what's happening. So there's not a huge amount of framework specific context required to get started with writing in the Composition API, which I think is it's a nice touch.
Yeah, one of the interesting things Evan did for Vue 3 was a lot of it is actually like broken out into very like small like libraries that are not only tree shakeable, but basically you can break apart Vue 3's reactivity and use it in like a React context and those sort of things. And it was basically designed to be super modular. So one of the interesting talks that was about like using Vue 3's reactivity to watch stuff on the back end and then like track changes and like update things. And so I think for that reason, to your point, it is supposed to go away from like being necessarily Vue specific, but being able to be composed in different contexts.
Yeah. Chat just let us know that the reason that didn't work is that we forgot to save counter.js. Good catch, Linus. Thank you for pointing that out. It's always good when it's me and not like things. Yeah. Okay. So
I think there was a question though.
Oh yeah, let's see.
State management, and I kind of want to address that one.
Let's find out. Where is it? I don't know. If you had a question and we didn't answer it, will you throw it back into state in Composition API is similar in a way to like the state in VueX.
VueX, yes. So this is a common thing that's come across. People are like, oh, with Composition API, we don't need VueX anymore. I think anytime we say anything in absolutes, that's always like there are trade-offs as always. I still think VueX has a lot of value as far as debuggability tools. So if we think of like Redux and official state management libraries, like being able to time travel and see what exactly happened over mutation and actions can be very important in especially like a production app when you have like just all these events happening at once. But certainly, yes, Composition API does open up different ways of call it sharing state or moving it in modular ways that maybe don't necessarily always need to be in a global singleton like a Redux pattern, for example. But that doesn't necessarily make it obsolete. So I just want to make that very clear.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And American 2050, the reason that I didn't spread use counter is personal preference. It would totally work. There's like an internal alarm that starts to sound when I get like too many layers of destructuring in where I'm like, this is too hard to read. And so sometimes I just add intermediate variables to explain to myself what I'm doing. So, all right, should we refactor? Let's refactor the wish list because I feel like that's going to be a little more.
I'd like to have you, based on what you've learned now, how would you rewrite the wish list?
Oof, okay, here we go. All right, so I'm going to create a setup function. That function is going to need to return, we need to return GIFs, which we'll just get from here. So we'll just return that straight up. We need to return filter text, which will be reactive. No, that's not right. It needed to be, oh God. Oh wait, I can do this. All right, so we're gonna get our state, which is going to be reactive. And that's gonna have filter text in it.
Nice.
Okay. And then down here, we're going to spread use refs of state. And that means I need to import all of that, which I'm going to do from over here. Whoops. Okay. toRefs, not use refs. All right. So then we need to compute our list of GIFs. And that is coming filtered wish list. So I'm going to take all of this and I want to move it into here, filtered wish list, and that is going to be a function, and that function is going to take GIFs. It's going to return that, so it'll return. Did I miss like part of that? I did. Okay, so the filtered wish list is going to return off of the GIFs, label lowercase, and then we're going to use the state filter text, which is this one here, lowercase, and return whether or not the GIF should be there. So that should work. And because I am dropping it out like that, I actually don't even need to return the GIFs anymore because we don't use that.
Yeah.
So instead, we're going to get our filter text and our filtered wish list, which will be filter text, filtered wish list. And I don't think I need to do a submit vote, but we can worry about that in a second. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't work because computed is defined but never used because I didn't compute this.
Yep.
I cannot not write computered.
Computered. That should be an
Okay.
alias we include.
Look at it go.
Look at you go.
Now, check this out, though, because I think this is like, maybe I'm just wired to read JavaScript a certain way, but this looks so much more readable to me. Like, I am instantly more on board with this approach. The composition API just feels a little more like, I wrote JavaScript and it did a JavaScript thing. Mm-hmm. I think that is really, really slick.
Yeah. So that's really all it is to it. And so, yeah, I see some questions talking about recursive in arrays and object. And yeah, the Vue through Reactivity just tracks all those things for you. So the moment you drop it in, it'll do the thing you want it to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really slick. Dang, I'm pumped on this. Like I'm feeling it. So
yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it.
I have a question.
I mean,
methods here.
Yes.
I could just return this, right? From like, I don't necessarily need this to be in methods.
No, gosh, no. Yeah, you just do your usual thing, right? Declare a JavaScript function that you want to do stuff with, and you expose it where it makes sense. And so you will need to expose it at the return level. But yeah, to your point, like I love how you just organically realize that, like, oh, I don't need GIFs anymore, right? Like that's just something that like I only need it inside the internal function. But I might, for cleanliness, I might actually although actually maybe this does work though. Interesting. Actually, I think that might actually work. Can we try
object ID? Yeah, it's working.
Okay. See, this is what I mean. Like, because it's just JavaScript, you can kind of compose it as you will. But I think most people would do a const submit vote equals, function. Like they would declare that separately. But again, as you can see, Jason's way worked.
Okay, so now I have an idea because we've got a little bit of time left. We've got about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I have a more complex use case that it would be interesting to see how you would approach this.
Go for it.
We want to be able to wish for these items, right?
Yep.
To do that, we need a counter, but not a counter that is global, but a counter that's tied to these object IDs.
Yep.
So to do that, we would need some kind of a map of like each gift ID to a count.
Yep.
I feel like we can use the composition API. I feel like we can use state. So we could do this a bunch of ways, right? Like we could put it all in here, but we could also use a separate state.
You could. It's up to you.
Okay.
How would you do it? Like, what's your instinct? I think that's the first way to start with this.
Okay. So my instinct would be to use a map, probably, because JavaScript maps let you set unique keys. It has the .has method so that we can figure out whether or not it's already got a count tracked. It has the get and set method so that we can figure out what the initial count is and set the new count. That might be a little more than we need.
Yeah. If we look in the actual gifs.json that I did, I think the data structure in there already includes a count, I want to say.
It has a votes, that's right.
Votes, sorry, that's what we want. That's what it is.
Okay.
So theoretically, you want to be able to increment votes, right, is what you're saying?
That's a good point. So yeah, so this is actually interesting because we're treating these as if they're coming from a database. We don't have a database to update, and I'm not. We could potentially set one up in 30 minutes, but I feel like that would be we'd be rushing to the point that
yes.
Yeah. So let's think about how we would solve this.
So actually, let's say, because you're saying, what if we didn't have votes, right? And you wanted to update each item?
I was thinking without the votes, if we were just going to try to hold this in state, because we're eventually we would want to send these back, and maybe that could actually be we could even do a step further, and we could say, how can we use the Vue Composition API with databases, and maybe you can come back and we can refactor this even further, and we'll hook some serverless functions up or something. But for now, let's assume we don't have any data store, and instead we have to store it in state. So we need to just we'll ignore that votes for the moment, and we'll write this as if we had to just track it here.
So let's go inside of wish list.
Okay.
And this time, because we have a starting point, like we have data. So this is where we would actually go ahead and say inside of state, I would add a gift, call it gift list, and then equate that to the imported JSON. So gift list : gift.
Okay.
And so what we have now here is a fully reactive object. So if theoretically we needed to append a new property, like you were saying, like let's call it likes instead of votes. Let's like pretend it doesn't exist. Then I think below where state is declares a line, like let's do a new line on like line 36. And so like to your point, right, we could just do state dot gift list dot map, and then we'll map every item, which we'll call a gift. And then we're just gonna do, and for every gift dot like, let's just start it at 8. That's like every gift like will have 8 likes to start.
Just to map terminology. I'm gonna use wishes since it's a wish list.
Sounds good. And then I think now if we let's go ahead and render that in each item as like so we can show it.
Okay, so something is happening that I need explained.
Oh yes.
We are using map, which would return, but we're not doing anything with that. Should we use for each in this case?
Yes, I think you're right.
Okay, and now because this is reactive, this will update. This will update.
Okay. Yes, it should update correctly.
So then I'm gonna use gift wishes instead of votes.
Yep.
And now everything has 8 wishes. Good. Okay.
Good. So that worked exactly as we hoped. So now you said you want to be able to modify each one, right? Like when we press the button. So theoretically, if we go down to our declare function for what do we declare? It was like increment vote. What do we call it? Submit vote.
I think we need to.
Yeah. So let's pull that out. Let's call it like
add wish.
Add wish. Perfect.
Okay. So we'll add that up here somewhere. For now, we can just like function add wish.
Yep, perfect. Function add wish, and then it'll receive an ID, because we're gonna need that. And then this is where we would write our sort of mini search function, right? So state dot gift list dot find, I think is what we probably want. And then for every gift
dot ID equals ID.
And then basically if if that thing is true, if gift found is true, or return
right, we could just get away with this because we're able to mutate.
Because it's all React, like Vue is tracking everything. So at this point, find it, then add the thing. So we just exposed it there. Great. And if we scroll up now to the top, we need to switch out the function on the button. I don't think we have it attached to the right one.
That's right. Wait, didn't I do that? Add wish, gift ID. So
you did. So it is.
This doesn't need to be computed or anything.
Nope. But can we log out ID real quick just to like make sure we know what is being passed in? Great. So now when we click,
here's our ID.
Great.
And then
ID.
Let's also log
gift to make sure.
And it is finding our gift, but it's a proxy, which means that we need to get its value.
Oh gosh, this is where it's a little bit. Yes, I think let's do that for now. Try that gift.value plus gift.value.wishes. Oh gosh, this will be another one of those gotchas. You may have to use ref. Okay. Oh, okay. So Alex is in the chat, may have to save, but let's go ahead and
gift.value.wishes like that.
Oh, yes. GIF or
doesn't like that at all.
No. Oh, I forgot now. You found the item, but then
we aren't able to modify it because it's a proxy.
Yeah, so I think it's to Alex's point, I think it's toRef that we need.
Ooh, what doesn't it like? GIF.value. I saved. Oh, I didn't save. Yeah, so here's our proxy.
Oh, actually, you know what we should do? Because once we've no. Find Swordsman has something. Okay, that's okay. I believe we need to wrap gift in, or I got it. I think I got it. toRefs. So if you wrap the state.giftList.find, because we're returning a static data, right? Because it's just normal JavaScript. It's just returning static data. We need to actually tell Vue that this is a reactive property. So I think toRefs applies to here. This is where it gets a little funky.
Okay, so if I do like const gift list equals toRefs state.
I don't think you even need to go that far, because oh wait, why are we doing gift list? Shouldn't it be state.giftList?
Well, I was saying that we did the toRefs on the state.
Sorry. Okay, got it.
And then destructure, but it doesn't like that. What doesn't it like? Unhandled error. Gift list.find is not a
function, so it means that gift list.value. Yeah, actually, yeah. What is gift list? Let's double check that real quick.
So here's our gift list. It is a proxy.
Okay, if it's a proxy, then we probably need .value.
Okay. Gift list.value.find. Okay, so it likes.
That's much better.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
So it doesn't return. Wait, can we log gift now?
Yep. And I will log it after we set the wishes on it. And so it's
another proxy. So then do gift.value.wishes plus equals 1.
Okay.
Then this
gift.value is undefined.
Didn't like that either.
Okay, so
this is weird.
So I wonder if this is like we're doing something kind of funky here, which is we are like taking a data object, sticking it into state, and then we're like pulling it out of state and trying to mutate it. And I'm wondering if it would be easier to like get the whole object and then I don't know. Reactivity is a little confusing to me because mutation is not the way my default is.
Const gifts. Okay, so Julian is suggesting in the chat const gifts equals toRefs and then state.gift. So he's proposing to wrap that. I think that's one of the things I was going to propose we try. So just delete all. No, not actually. Oh, you know what? That might be the problem. Yeah, delete line 43. Because again, it's one of those like once you break the proxy, then things start to just go haywire.
Say all of that again, because now I'm confused.
Yeah, it's fine. So earlier we were trying to, you had pulled out gift list from state without the toRefs for a second, and then you deleted it. So I would say ignore me for a moment.
So the other thing I'm confused about here is like we have, like this just worked, right?
Yes, correct.
What's different now in here?
Because we're assigning a variable to gift, I think that's the problem.
So if I instead do like a state.giftList.find And we'll do gift and you like ID equals gift.id, and then I just do wishes plus equals 1.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
Because that's kind of what we did here, right?
Right.
Will it let me do that?
Yeah. Let's just what happens. I think it's gonna. Okay. So what
So
happens?
it doesn't break, but it doesn't do anything, and I'm wondering.
Can you just for just to try to add the dot value just to see because if it found a ref and then
I want to see if we get like, what does it give us out of this value?
I see. Yes. Okay. Let's see.
And that just gives us straight up the number, which is incorrect. So that's not what we want. So instead,
No.
we want.
Can you find a new object? Then you are losing. Yeah, I think so. For those watching, so I think we're dealing with sort of the reference getting lost somewhere in call it the assignment of a new variable. And
so do I need to like for each this instead?
I mean, I know for sure we could literally do like for each if this happens, then increment. That'll 100% work. But I was really trying to make the find work, which is why I didn't want to. But yes, this would 100% work, or it should. Actually, let me be very clear in case it doesn't. I'm pretty sure. I with a fair degree of confidence, I'm pretty sure this would work. So you don't even need the val anymore, and then let's just save.
Let me hard refresh.
Why isn't it liking it?
Yeah, what's the deal?
State.giftList.for each gift if gift. Yeah, why is it not incrementing it?
Let me double check that I'm getting like the data, the ID. Yeah, the ID is right. So that should match.
Can we, I guess, log out what the object is? If then logged gift, I guess.
Let's make sure we're getting the right gift. So here's a Furby. Let's wish for a Furby. We get an ID. We get a proxy. And the target of that proxy. But look. Look. It updated. So
it did update.
So our reactivity is doing something weird, and I don't know what it is. Do we have to wrap it in computed or reactive or something?
Can you do gift dot? This is gonna sound weird. Can you do gift dot value dot wishes? Because I wonder if at the point you've broken down, is it a ref?
No,
it's not. Okay, so something's weird.
This gift dot value is undefined.
Linda's saying is gift dot wishes actually set as reactive?
That was what I was wondering. Is I don't think that we're making this value reactive. Is what I'm saying. Like I don't think
saying
that,
we needed toRef. Okay, I think Alex, most likely Alex has tried something that does.
But didn't the toRef blow up on us?
No, we did toRefs. I think he might be saying toRef, which is
specifically for gift here.
Like it's a singular toRef. I'm trying to find the docs on this bit. Let me see.
So like this then?
Oh, okay.
That seems like it's going to explode. Let's actually import this though.
Yes, please import that. Oh, okay.
No,
yeah,
it doesn't
okay.
like that either.
Hold on. Okay, let's try this. Let's go back. Let's forget the for each. Let's go to the find because I think this is what most people are going to want to do because the for each. Let's const. We did const gift equals. And then this will be where we do the toRef and we'll pass it in. And we're passing in state.giftList.find. Yep. And then.
Okay, so now we have our gift is a ref.
So which means
this item.
Yep. So let's log gift to make sure that I'm not totally wrong about this.
Okay, here we go. We're doing it.
We're doing it. We got this. Okay.
Still a proxy.
Good. No, that's good. That's actually really good.
Okay.
Okay. Now, because now we just have a ref, it'll be gift.value.wishes plus equals 1.
Gift.value is undefined.
Wait, how?
Unclear.
We're trying to use it when the source property doesn't work. Optional props. No.
Yeah, so the part that's confusing here is that it's pulling in, like the value is correct, right? So we've got this target and then the wishes get updated, or they don't now because this one's broken, but they are getting updated and then the UI is not updating. So that has me thinking, what's going on? Must use .value to read or write. Because if we go here, right?
Yeah.
This sets the value. Oh, stop helping.
GIF wishes.
So we get our proxy, we get our target, and then we see the wishes are updated. So this doesn't feel like the logic in this function is wrong. It feels like our reactivity is not flagged properly. Like, does this need to be set as something because it's nested inside of GIFs?
Computer?
No,
Why?
by design that
like
shouldn't
this?
have changed.
Yeah, so like here, do I need to make this reactive?
Because all the pieces are already refs.
I'm just gonna push buttons. Nope, doesn't like that.
Yeah, no, that shouldn't be it, because the whole point of
all right.
it's
So
like
that's exciting.
it's the whole recursive thing. It's supposed to watch everything for you without you doing something specific. That's one of the things that Vue's supposed to do for you. So my question ends up being why.
Do you suspect it's because we're using the filtered wish list? Like, do we need to update the filtered wish list?
That's a computer property that's totally separate.
But
So
that is
shouldn't
actually, no, it's not.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my God. Is this it? Is this the thing?
But that would be so weird if that was conflicting like that, though.
Here's why. We weren't using the GIFs.
Oh.
We were, yeah. Okay.
Well done, Jason. Well done. Where's the championship belt?
Okay.
Okay,
First try.
so
Yeah, there it is.
so it is working. Oh my gosh! And I was like, I swear it's gotta be easier than this. Okay, so right, because we were modifying every single time. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is actually, but this is important. We just learned something that I am never going to forget now, which is that when we are using state like this, if we're reaching outside of the state, we can't do computed properties off that. So this filtered wish list has to be dependent on reactive properties, or it will not update the way we expect.
Yeah.
So by putting this in here, originally I was hoping we wouldn't have to do that, but when we've got dependent states, we have to use this reactive GIF list. We can't use the parent GIFs. So okay, hard won lesson there.
I was like, I don't under. So okay, so for those who sort of might have missed it, basically we did not have the state.gif list on line 28. We were literally modifying the import. So it was basically throwing a wrench in everything.
Yeah. So originally what we had done is we were using this, which is being imported from here. So we'd lost all of our reactivity.
And it's also being passed in 25. So you just had this calamity of like not knowing what's what. So we scroll down a bit though, just to make sure now. Linus is like, we didn't mutate the proxy. So we can see here now we found it, we modified it, and now it works exactly as we thought.
Absolutely.
So I didn't have to do any weird toRef or anything. Like this just works now.
Yeah. So aside from the fact, like if we take this from the skip all the parts where we were doing it wrong and just look at this happy path here, this is very approachable. We just do what we would expect. We get our GIF list from the state, we run the find on it, we make an update, you mutate the object in place, and it works. So this is actually really pleasant to use, with that gotcha that you have to make sure that everything you're modifying is in fact tracked in this state. Man, that is really nice. Okay.
I mean, so again, I think there were a couple of questions. So reactive is a style. You can use all refs. Like if you want to manually declare every single reactive data as ref, that's up to you. And so similarly, I think it was like, do you have to put compute it inside of Reactive? Nope. That's just basically a way to organize it that's open to you. But you're 100% entitled to say const everything and then just manually export it. I just find the reactive object grouping is a good way of grouping similar like context so that as your components inevitably get more complex, you can easily group things together in a way that makes sense for your logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know, is it using something like immer under the hood?
I actually don't even know what immer is.
So probably not then.
Yeah. I do. Basically, every time I've heard the reactivity explained underneath, it's using JavaScript proxies as how everything's works. So I don't think it's anything proprietary. It's just, but that's one of the reasons also why it has limited back portability to, I think, IE11, for example, because proxies aren't native to IE11.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, Vue 3 is based on like the reactivity has been rewritten around the JavaScript proxies.
Yeah. So Anna's asking, would we still need the GIF list in the setup? Yes, this is actually what makes it work, because what happens is we take this this plain JSON object and we make it reactive by putting it into this GIF list prop, which means that when we modify it, the filtered wish list is using the updated version, what's been reactive, what is reactive, instead of using this non-reactive version here, which is what was causing us problems before, where it was updating, but because it wasn't reactive, the UI didn't care. It was like, yeah, whatever, you can do whatever you want with your JavaScript. I'm not aware of that. I have no reason to care. So this was actually the magic that made it work. We tracked the whole list inside of this reactive state, and now we can do all of these modifications.
Yep.
Okay, so Ben, this was super fun. I absolutely want to come back and take this even further with some serverless functions and see if we can, let's make a UI that actually remembers what our state is, because right now it's hard coded.
Yes, that it
so
is.
Every time that we come in here, when we refresh the page, that's starting it at 0 every time. So we want to get to the point where we can persist that. So maybe next time what we'll do is we'll stand up a little database, we'll stand up some serverless functions, and we'll make this persist. We can release it into the world and let the chat wish for Furbies until their heart's content.
That sounds wonderful.
In the meantime, for somebody who wants to go further with this, where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, so one, there's always the official docs that we have that Jason had dropped, and basically the v3.vuejs.org. We have a whole composition API guide in there, but composition API is very new, and we're trying our best to figure out ways to explain it in a way that's approachable. So if you read something and you're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, please file an issue, reach out to us. We're always looking for ways to improve the docs, and we have a whole team dedicated to it on the core team. So feedback is always welcome. But in case you want like more practice, on Jamstack Explorers, if you could open that up, Jason, we have a whole composition API course for you.
Oh, that's right. You just did this, didn't you?
Yeah, I just released this like a couple weeks ago. Gosh, it feels so much longer. But yeah, so this is completely free. This is a video platform that Jason and I and the DX team got to build together. And so if you're launching with the composition API, basically inside here, it'll take you from beginning to end. So if you need sort of a re-walkthrough of what it was to go from options API over to composition API, and it actually covers a little bit more in there regarding lifecycle hooks and the watch method. So feel free to check those out. And there are little exercises in there that you can try out. And as always, I'm always a resource. So you can find me on Twitter on the usual things. So happy to chat further.
Y'all, I'm not going to play the sound on this, but I have to just point out how upstaged we've all been by Ben. Look at this. He got like this astronaut, and he did like a robo voiceover. I'm very unhappy because I have to put so much more effort into my Explorers courses now. So thanks, Ben. Gave me chores. Okay, so Ben, that is a couple great resources for people getting started with Composition API.
Yep.
Where should folks go if they want to follow you? I'm going to drop your Twitter right now.
Yeah, Ben Code Zen. I'm pretty proud of this. I know that it'll be harder over time, but I pretty much own Ben Code Zen on all of the things. So, whether it's Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, GitHub, I've luckily been able to be consistent with this branding across most platforms. So, but also, that's my site right there, bencodezen.io. So happy to chat.
Dragon is amazing, by the way.
Designed by Dave DeSandro. So big shout out to him who designed the Bower logo, which many of you might know.
Oh, cool. I did not know that. Very fun. Well, okay, so that is amazing. Ben, thank you so much for taking some time with us today. Chat, as always, thank you so much for hanging out. And remember, this show has been live captioned by Amanda from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and helping make the show a little more accessible. Captions and this show in general are made possible by sponsorship. Netlify, Fauna, Auth0, Hasura, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people and helping me generally keep the lights on, which I very much appreciate. Make sure you go and check out our schedule. We've got so much good stuff coming up. Later this week, Sarah Drasner is going to join us. We're going to talk about how to get that first job in tech. She's going to be telling us about how she spots people, what she's screening for when she's looking at resumes, how you can stand out if you're putting your resume into that stack, and some other strategies. This is going to be more Q&A style, so definitely show up live, because if you don't show up live, you don't get to ask your questions. You just get to see what everybody else asks. So please, please, please mark your calendars. Come show up. You can click this add to calendar button and it will put it on your Google Calendar for you. Then next week, we've got Emma Bostian coming back. We're going to do the final taco showdown. We already had a big argument about whether or not Taco Bell tacos are tacos. Emma says they are. I say she's wrong. As I am correct, I want to have another episode where we put that into the world and really just kind of finalize that. Lori Barth is going to come and teach us how to build a Babel plugin. Even if you think you'll never need a Babel plugin, learning how these work is going to be a big power up for your JavaScript skills. So definitely come by, stop by. We're going to do WordPress with Next. We're going to do flexible CMS layouts with Slice Machine from Prismic. We're going to do serverless marketing automation. That's going to be a fun episode. Joel's always a bag of laughs. And we're going to look at error tracking in serverless functions with Sentry and Ben Vinegar. So please come on. Mark your calendars, come hang out. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait to see you. Chat, stay tuned. We're going to raid. Ben, thank you one more time for hanging out with us today. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.